Welcome into King Wales album review party. Today we have a very, very special project to talk about. But first, I'm gonna welcome in my co-host, Ty. How are you doing? How you living?
I'm doing great. It's been a minute. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
minute. Life got really hectic and crazy there for both of us. And so it's nice to just be back in the saddle once more.
I couldn't agree more. And again, yes, I apologize for that because yeah, we both got super busy. I just moved into a new apartment, as you can probably see, so I was super busy with that. I think the last album we did was um Sabrina Carpenter's Short and
Her
Sweet.
album. Yeah.
Yeah, Short and Sweet. That's I couldn't think of the name of it for a second. And that was like almost I don't think it was a month ago, but it might have been like 3 weeks ago. Um,
I
so
wow.
was it
Even
that
that
long ago?
long. That still feels like a lot compared
I
to how
know.
much we would like get together to record.
We were doing really good on the weekly episodes, and we are gonna get back to those. So don't worry,
Yes.
it's gonna happen.
Yes.
Um,
If you have to hold your breath, you can hold your breath. We will get back to them.
So today, of course, we are going to be talking about Pete Rock and Common's album that just came out earlier this year, the Auditorium, Volume One. And the
Ooh,
plan was to talk about this one a little bit earlier too, but like I said, we had gotten so busy. Um, but fortunately, I got a chance to see them on their tour when they came to Charlotte, and it
you
was
did.
awesome. It was
So,
awesome.
so yeah, maybe open up and tell us, like, start us off with how that was. How were they live?
So they did a great job of keeping the energy going the entire show.
Mhm.
Because hip hop is one of those things, especially with Common and Pete Rock and their style of hip hop. Like when you have a show full of I guess I'm trying to find the best way to explain it. When you have shows that are just like if the music is over tracks, after a little bit, it can be kind of hard to keep the audience engaged. Like, if you're rapping a really long verse, sometimes it can be
Mhm.
tough to keep the audience engaged because a lot of rap songs feel like some rap songs are better listened to than they are performed live. Like one of my
Yeah.
favorite Common songs is They Say, featuring John Legend and Kanye West. And the track is
Mhm.
so chill and so perfect. But when you're performing it live, people can kind of get, I'm not going to say lost, but it can be hard to be like super engaged with it because it's not like hype. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, especially with Common and Pete Rock style, because most trap songs are just all hype all the time. So you can just keep hopping around to the stage. But that doesn't
Mhm.
always work for all of Common's and Pete Rock song.
And this
Um,
album itself is not all up tempo tracks.
yes, exactly, exactly. I would definitely say if you have a chance to, I think the tour is kind of over. But
Mhm.
if you listen to this album, listen to it and then go see it live because they do a great job of bringing it to life. And this almost feels like an album that you should listen to live if you want the full experience.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think I would like this album as much if I hadn't seen it performed live. That
Hmm.
I'll be honest with. I'll be honest
Okay.
with that. The entire show that they were able to put on with it I think really brought it together and made
Yeah.
it feel like more than just an album. Because of course, Common did some of his classics, Pete Rock did some of his classics. They reminisce over you. It was awesome. But when they performed the songs on this album, they did a good job of keeping it hype and keeping people together. They had like a whole set on stage. They had like a whole story thing going on.
Mhm.
Common would come out and do some songs, then Pete Rock would do some, and then they would do them together. Pete Rock would go from the turntables to the microphone. At one point, Common brought a girl up on stage and was like rapping to her for like 4 or 5 different songs, and took a bunch of selfies with her. So she's probably never gonna forget that, obviously.
Mhm.
So it was very cool. It kept the whole audience engaged. And yeah, I definitely think it's hard. I don't want to say like the performance was better than the album, like because that feels like you're comparing two things that can't really be compared.
Sure.
But I definitely feel like this album is one that needs to be experienced in concert. So I
Mhm.
think if you have a chance to go see him, do it. Definitely go do it.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting then to hear. our differences and how we feel about the album because I did not get to go to see Common and Pete Rock.
to
I
see it.
was I was trying to make it up there with you, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah, the commute was 500 miles for a commute. I don't know if there's a concert I would go 500 miles to see. Um, well, there actually is some concerts I would probably go 500 miles to see now. But so let's get your first thoughts about this album. What did you think about it? Did anything stand out to you? Were there low moments, high moments?
Um, I would say as a whole, this album was just meh to me. I really don't feel much of a strong way in either direction. I mean, there are some songs in here that I absolutely hated.
Heated.
I
Wow. Okay.
Chi-Town Do It,
Hmm.
Chi-Town Do It was awful. I hated the way it was produced, the mixing, the beat in the background. It was not for me. It was so because he sampled a lot of Kanye West, but
Hmm.
in a like I just got my first like recording software, and so I'm just throwing in a bunch of samples that I found online and putting it together. It did not sound cohesive. It did not sound like it had any structure, anything like that.
Interesting.
Man, did I hate it, and is it a huge low point for me. The rest of it, I not to just focus on the beginning, I really did enjoy the opening.
Hmm.
I Dreamin' was a great way to begin. And I would say for me personally, Dreamin' and maybe Fortunate uh were like some of my more favored tracks on the album. But as a whole, I just didn't feel, I don't know, nothing clicked for me to make this stand out. And I had to re-listen to it a bunch because kept forgetting a lot of the album. And to me, that's like the thing that sums it up is I can't even bear to remember tracks aside from like two or three. And one of them is just because I disliked it so much. And the others are just like, yeah, yeah, it's not bad. Um,
Hmm.
but for the most part, rather lackluster.
Yeah, I can kind of understand where you're coming from, honestly. As someone who's like I'm a very big fan of Common, but
Hmm.
I'm a fan of a lot of his earlier works. Like there are some albums I just don't really like Universal Mind Control is not one I'm a huge fan of. I
Hmm.
think there was one that came after that. To me, B is still his top album far and away. And
Hmm.
I think even like comparing, like if you compare this to Pete Rock's best work, which to me is Mecca and the Soul Brother, I
Hmm.
still think he and CL Smooth had a little more chemistry. I think on the
Hmm.
beat a little bit. I think overall, when I think about this album, like I love boom bap, and I still think it's the best genre of hip hop.
Hmm.
But I also understand why we're kind of not in that era anymore
Hmm.
because we've it's been there so long that again, I feel the same way about albums that are like just trap music. Eventually it all starts to sound the same.
Hmm.
And I think with this album with Pete Rock, a lot of the production, a lot of the tempos, it felt like a lot of the samples were kind of similar, kind of the same,
Yeah.
kind of the same tempo. It's really hard for anything to really stand out. Like on B, Kanye West switched up the instrumentation and the energy so much that every single song stands out, and this was back in '07. Now we're talking almost 20 years later. So I kind of see what you mean. It's hard for any individual tracks to stand out. I think when I heard this album, I wasn't necessarily like, this is a special album. It was just kind of like, yeah, Common can still rap and Pete Rock can still rap.
Right.
Um, but it didn't hit me the same way that Samurai hit me. It didn't hit me the
Yes.
same way that Ultra 85 hit me. Because even
Right.
Ultra 85, just comparing the just excuse me, Logic, I think like the reason why Ultra 85 stands out, even though it was a lot of boom bap, Logic brings so much energy and so much passion into it. And Lupe, just the deep lyricism is so insane on Samurai. And it's not completely all boom bap. He does switch it up a little bit with the different styles, even within boom bap. And
Right.
soundtrack his producer does.
Right.
And so I think that could have helped this album stand out a little bit more. You know, I hear what you're saying. Like, I haven't really like the way I think you feel about Chi-Town. I don't know if you've heard LL Cool J's album. I wanted to do a review of it, but LL Cool J just came out with an album,
Oh no, I
and
have not listened to it.
he has guys like Eminem, he has guys like Nas on it, whole bunch of different featured like from rap legends, and I'm like, oh man, is LL back? Like, I'd love to listen to this.
Hmm.
There was not a single song that I liked on there. I think I hated
Really?
almost every single
Almost
song.
every one of them?
And it's like, it's not even necessarily it's just the production to me wasn't good. Like, I didn't like any of the beats. It felt like it was trying too
Right.
hard to be unique almost.
Hmm.
So I kind of feel like it felt oversampled too, like just random samples just jumbled together. So I think how you felt about Shy City was how I felt about LL Cool J's album overall. And like I hate
How
to say that
memorable.
because like, I
Because
wanted to hear Nas.
he's so legendary and he's so big.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I saw him at the Spectrum Center, he put on an incredible show. It was
Hmm.
absolutely incredible. And I don't know any of his songs because they all came out before I was born. But
But the energy
it's
was there,
still
the
yeah,
art
yeah, yeah, yeah.
work was there.
Mm-hmm. But this album, it was just like I couldn't get behind it at all. So that's why I didn't even bring it up for us to review it because I was like, I have nothing good to say. And maybe we should review albums that we don't always love too. Maybe that would be a little bit more interesting. But I'm like, I feel like I would just rip this album to shreds because I
That's all you'd
just
be doing.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to LL. I'm not gonna do that to a rap great. I'm gonna get killed or struck by a bolt of lightning. Like LL Cool J's gonna be like zap. Well, then again, if he
It's
saw this podcast, I think that mean we were doing pretty good on
Yeah, I think you could take a bolt of lightning
yeah.
if
That would be
at that
worth a
point.
bolt of lightning if he got to see it. But yeah,
I think to your point, when you were kind of talking about how for you a lot of a genre can start to feel like it's all the same if you listen to it too much or if it's become so popular. I think that's the distinct signifier for um albums that don't feel as like creatively inspired or like push the needle. Like this just feels like an album. Like when the boom bap plays on the Auditorium Volume 1, it feels like the generic boom bap where you would use boom bap as like an insult to a genre. It's like, man, that doesn't sound exciting or energetic. Like that's just some boring boom bap. Like to me, a lot of the sampling in this album feels like that, whereas something like Samurai felt so unique and fresh and like a breath of air. Like it felt like Lupe had put in a lot of energy and excitement and tried to change something that is kind of timeless and still try to make it fresh. I did not feel anything fresh from this. This is like a stale saltine cracker to me.
a
It's like
stale salty cracker.
it will give you nourishment if that's what you're in need of, but I just did not get a lot of the inspiration. And then
Hmm.
too on some of his like verses, I did like there were a few tracks where there was some like slick wordplay that I just like, wow, yeah, Common is a great
Yeah,
rapper. Like
still got it.
there's a reason that he is. Um, but some tracks where he gets very poetic with the way he's talking, it felt so like generic that it didn't feel not to just be comparing, but you brought up Ultra 85. That's something that it feels like Logic was using like his blood to write the
Hmm.
verses with. he was using the core fiber of his being to write it. Like he poured himself into it. And with the Auditorium Volume 1, it just feels like a very safe, like saran wrapped interview kind of expression of like, oh, well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking me. This is why, I have like there's this one track, I can't remember if it was Wise Up, but he's talking about these different ladies, and they're all like these core fundamental aspects that he holds true to himself. Things like faith, things like hope. One of them was, is it Destiny? I think is one of them that he's talking about. And I was listening to it, and I've heard other rappers talk about the exact same thing in a way that made me feel like I just went to church. Like I just heard
Hmm.
like a gospel, or like I just heard, this really powerful message uh here. But when Common did it on this album, I just felt like he's reading from note cards. Like I just didn't feel the kind of like personal resonance that I think to me makes those kinds of albums soar and is kind of like making it a little more popular today, is having that really deep connection with it that just doesn't feel like it's there.
Yeah, and just I was looking. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Because I was looking at this the other day, because the hip hop awards, like it felt like they came and went. Like I didn't even realize that they had come and gone so quickly.
Hmm.
But we've reviewed a lot of hip hop albums this year, and I remember going through this award list and being kind of surprised. So I just want to take a look at it real quick because it's kind of going back to what I'm talking about. And it's like, okay, hip hop video of the year, Not Like Us. That's easy. Not really surprised there.
Hmm.
Best collaboration, Like That.
Like that
Okay,
makes
understandable.
makes sense.
Yeah, I probably would have given it, honestly, probably would have given it to first person shooter if it wasn't for Like That, just because Kendrick killed first person shooter when he responded to it.
Hmm.
Um, but so then we get to best duo and group,
Hmm.
and you got Future and Metro Boomin. And like you'll notice in the hip hop awards, it is completely dominated by trap music, like
Hmm.
100% dominated. And you've got Common and Pete Rock, who, like I said, despite this album, I think I still would have named them the best duo or group just based upon the options that we got.
Hmm.
Like Future and Metro Boomin, I still think I like this album better than Future and Metro Boomin because they're doing the exact same thing except with trap music, which just happens to be more popular. You know what I mean? Like it didn't
Hmm.
feel like anything. Like if you take Kendrick Lamar off of Like That, I don't even think they win in this category.
Hmm.
But just moving on through live performer.
I think yeah, it really does just it shows how big that beef was for specifically hip hop in
Hmm.
like a hip hop centric award show. Like it feels like how could you have many other winners?
Right. I did love how Missy Elliott won Best Live Performer. That was
Oh,
pretty
okay.
cool because a lot of people forget how good of a live performer she is. This
Hmm.
is where I had a beef, not necessarily with the winner,
Hmm.
like lyricist of the year, Kendrick Lamar. Eh, like what he did was with the beef and how he killed Drake. Like, there's obviously a lot more public spotlight on that.
Hmm.
And here you have Common, and for good reason, right? But you've got Megan the Stallion, Cardi
Hmm.
B, 21 Savage,
Hmm.
Drake, and Nicki Minaj over guys like Logic and Lupe Fiasco.
Hmm.
And to me, I'm like, okay, the people who chose this, they just didn't listen to Ultra 85 and they didn't listen to Samurai.
I
That's the
think
only explanation to me.
I think it is rather crazy that in a list of how many is that total? Is that eight
Uh,
eight
six,
nominees?
seven, yeah, eight nominees.
That Lupe Fiasco is not one of them. I will stand by Megan Thee Stallion. She is a really great lyricist. She is a great music maker. I think she is too often overlooked for it. if you listen to her was it her track Hiss with her, I mean it got way overshadowed by the Kendrick Drake thing, but her beef with Nicki Minaj that they did clashing diss tracks towards each other, she absolutely ate up Nicki Minaj.
Oh, I didn't even
And
realize they beefed.
Hiss is an amazing track. It's a great takedown. But yeah, I really do not see what is Nicki Minaj doing on there in the year 2024. In the year 2024, what is Nicki Minaj doing on there?
And when I look at this again, I'm really glad that Common is on there, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna pick Common over Logic or Lupe this year. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not. I probably wouldn't pick him. I probably wouldn't pick him over Logic or Lupe almost any year, but especially not in a year where we got Samurai and Ultra 85.
Mm-hmm.
And then to me, it just shows like they're picking like who's popular, which is kind of true. I mean, obviously that plays an impact,
But
but
I feel
even
like
then,
at
I'm
the
just kind of
same
surprised
time,
because
like
like
Common doesn't even feel like a popular pick
right. That's
if
why
you
I
were to
was
go that
like,
route.
so I
Like
guess it's like, is it
he may be big
nostalgia?
on his name. Yeah, like his name carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Throwing Common's name on a list like this, but just on like skill alone, it just feels so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Because
like
like,
I'm not upset about his placement. I'm
uh-huh.
really not. I just it's very surprising to then also see people like Nicki Minaj and Drake be in the same conversation.
Right. And especially because it's like Logic is bigger than Common.
Hmm.
Like Logic has more listeners and more of the fan base. But Logic isn't nearly as big as Nicki Minaj, Megan Thee Stallion, Lil Wayne, Cardi B, 21 Savage, or Drake. So it's like it almost feels like Common made it in as the nostalgia pick. I don't know, but I just remember seeing this and being like, I'm not that upset that I didn't see the BET awards. Uh, but let me keep going because there's that um another one that's specifically related to Pete Rock and Common. Oh, that must have just been it. They must have just got nominated for Best Group, and Common got nominated for Lyricist.
What was
Um,
hip hop album of the year? Was that
um, oh, this is
not like
Song of the
not
Year,
not like us one song of the year?
and that's perfectly understandable. And honestly, when I think about Ultra 85 and Samurai, even this album, like nothing stands out on it to make me be like, yeah, it deserves a Song of the Year nod from
Hmm.
any of those three albums. But like Hip Hop Album of the Year, Pink Friday 2, I haven't listened to it, but again, it's like, okay, let's look at the kind of hip hop that we have. 21 Savage, trap.
Hmm.
Uh Glorilla, trap. Drake, pretty much trap, a little bit of kind of pop rap instrumentals. Sexy Red, trap. Megan Thee Stallion, all trap. Gunna, trap. Travis Scott, trap. Featuring Metro Boomin, trap.
I do wonder what the time frame is because this
Oh, of like when was the
of like
cutoff?
when I mean
Well, it had to
uh,
be before because came out on the auditorium came out earlier this year. It wasn't that long ago. I think the auditorium came out like in let me double check. I'm looking it up right now. Hip hop artist of the year, that's understandable. That's Kendrick. I feel like that is definitely earned because what he did with the beef and to be able to do the Super Bowl now. Um, oh, it's not coming up. Common and Pete Rock album. When did
oh,
it?
but you know what? Pete Rock did get a nom for producer of the year
Oh, that was cool. Okay, that was the other thing I was looking
for
at.
the auditorium.
So it came out on July 12th. And if I'm not mistaken, Samurai and Ultra 85 dropped before that. So this one's breakthrough hip hop artist. Again, none of the people we're talking about are breakthrough. Hustler. I mean, sure, yeah, 50 Cent makes sense. Best featured verse, again, like that, started off this whole thing. J. Cole's close with first person shooter. But yeah, I would definitely agree that. Impact track, not like us. Oh yeah, this is where Common and Pete Rock got another nod with Fortunate.
Oh,
Um,
did they?
yeah. Yeah, so this one, unfortunate, I probably would pit Not Like Us over Impact for it. Because it wasn't bad, but it was just not as big of an impact as Not Like Us, obviously.
Yeah.
And then DJ of the Year. Did Pete Rock get it on this one? Uh,
Love to see K Tronada
I
on
would have voted
on
for
that
K
list though.
Tronada. I would have given that one to
Love
him.
love seeing
Yeah.
him on the list every time I see him somewhere.
Hmm.
Alchemist, I do enjoy the Alchemist.
Yeah, especially because he
And
ended up winning Producer of the Year. I definitely
yeah.
would have given DJ of the Year to K Tronada. But yeah, and then that was it. Then just best hip hop platform. So I just remember looking at that and seeing Pete Rock and Common, and like again, I'm glad that they're represented on the hip hop awards, because they should be. But I'm also like, this album isn't like what it honestly feels like, because listening to this album and knowing like it's not really the best work from Common and not really the best work from Pete Rock. It feels like it's like, okay, we need one token. Like it almost feels like a tokenistic, like here's our old school boom bap nod that we
Hmm.
need to just to kind of like switch it up a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, because again, to me, if you're listening to Common and Pete Rock's album and you think like, oh wow, these tracks are so good and you're nominating them, I don't see how you listen to Ultra 85 and Samurai and not think that those at least deserving to be in the same place as the Auditorium Volume One. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, again, not trying to be like they didn't deserve it, because like to me, Common and Pete Rock's like the album that they dropped is still better than a lot of the stuff I saw on that list, just honestly. Uh,
Hmm.
but
The Will Rose hot take.
the Will Rose hot take, you know how it goes. But to
See,
me, it
really
just
not a trap fan.
it's got to be done. It's got to be done right. This is all I gotta say. Like that is a great example of it. But if you take Kendrick off of Like That, it's like, what is this? Like I just, and
Hmm.
like I love First Person Shooter. That was a trap song. It just depends on who's doing it, and if you, to me, you can't sacrifice lyricism
This
or
review is just turning into a defense of
defense of
my
trap
previous
versus boom
statement.
bap. So anyway, to kind of wrap up on this album,
Did you
um,
have a high point at all that you wanted to kind of highlight for this album?
it's like it feels weird, but I'm gonna just say the concert, because
Okay.
that was the highest point that I could
That
get from this
yeah,
album, because it was so similar throughout, and I kind of was feeling the same thing the whole time.
right.
So to me, the concert was the high point, and especially going to that concert, like it gives me a better view of this album.
Mhm.
If I could rate it, I might give it like a between like a 6 and a 7 out of 10. I know we don't usually give like a number, but like
Yeah.
that's probably where I would be.
The
Um,
concert or the album?
the album,
The album.
the concert was probably closer to an 8, and honestly, the concert is what's pulling the album up to like
Mhm.
between 6 and 7. Because I mean, the album still put them together,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, if
that
I were to
kind of makes
throw
me
a
appreciate
number, I'd just give it like a middle, like a 5
a
or
5. Yeah,
something. Like not
yeah,
awful, not great, just it was there and I listened to it.
yeah. And it's like, to me, it's like if you're looking at the hip hop awards and you're like wondering where the boom bap is represented or something like that, and you listen to the auditorium, like it's great. Like, like I'm still glad that it'll bring people to the auditorium, and I hope we get a volume two. But I'm
Hmm.
also like, if I need to represent boom bap, I'm gonna do it with Logic or Lupe, Samurai and
Hmm.
Ultra 85. Like those belong in album of the year categories, even
Hmm.
besides hip hop.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's not really surprising to not see them represented. Like, I can't remember the last time Lupe got a BET Hip Hop Award. But I don't know. It just kind of like it makes me feel like the Common and Pete Rock nod. Great album, but it doesn't feel authentic, I guess. I should say the nomination for it is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. Not to say like it wasn't deserved, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel authentic. Like it feels like they were like, okay, we need some boom bap. What's the first boom bap album that comes out? They listen to Common and they're like, okay, great. We got our boom bap pick. We don't need to listen or check out anything else. That's good. We'll kind of mix that in there so it doesn't seem like we're only picking trap, even though you were only picking trap artists for everything. So,
And I feel like that in the end, and again, this is just me, I feel like using this album as a representative of what boom bap can be feels disingenuous to that argument.
hmm
Like if I were to be the person who could, if I could only have one be the representative, I'm throwing Samurai on that list
hmm
because I feel like Samurai better represents not just the memory of boom bap, but what it can do going forward.
Now, exactly.
How can you use that in the year? Because it's not an all-timer list, it's a 2024 list. And
hmm
how was boom bap used in the year 2024 on like a released music level? I'm like 10 times out of 10, I am saying that I think Lupe squeaked it out just like this much over Ultra 85, maybe. Just
Honestly, it's like
like
that
he
for me too.
squeaked it. To me, they're neck and neck, and on a
hmm
different day, I may say Ultra 85. But at the end of the day, I would throw Lupe Fiasco on that list, and I would say, look at this is what boom bap can be as like a genre. Because I can't, again, I can't remember the name. I feel like I didn't do my due diligence as a co-host today. I should have had the name. But there's a track on here that I was listening to it, and I re-listened to it immediately afterwards, and I was thinking, I am pretty sure I have had this on in the background when I put on like lo-fi study beats to like study to. And it's
Yeah.
like it's just so like
hmm
there's nothing here. And I get that the
hmm
energy for that track, it wasn't appropriate for like what he was talking about for it to be some high energy track, but the interest still has to be there. And if
Yeah.
you're just going to be throwing like lo-fi beats out there to rap over, I don't think that's enough in the current year to not just like be great, but especially to be in the conversation of any kind of award.
Oh yeah.
Like that really doesn't feel like it hits the threshold for me.
I think you hit the nail on the head. This album is a perfect representation of what boom bap was and why it was so great in the 90s and what
Hmm.
it started with. And it feels like we got a rehash of everything that happened in the 90s. But to
Hmm.
me, in 2024, I'm nominating Samurai or Ultra 85 because that's what boom bap can be right now.
Yeah.
And like, I love Lupe, but honestly, I would have been just as happy if Logic's Ultra 85 was represented by the hip hop awards because again to me they are right there neck and neck right there
Hmm.
neck and neck. So
Hmm.
let us know what you thought about the auditorium, if you thought it was great, if you think we're stupid, or if you felt the same way that we were feeling, or if you hated it. Any of those thoughts, drop them down below and keep dropping suggestions on what we should do next time.
I'm ready to be humbled if I missed something. So please tell me how much you liked this album.
As Kendrick would say, be humble. We'll see you next time.